The first claim to fame I ever had was I sang solo at Westminster Cathedral, and I was with a choir, and we were in a competition to find the best choir in London, and they'd selected this for me to do. And I had a schoolmistress, Mrs. Murray, and she used to give me the nod, you know, and sometimes you'd come in after 3 bars or 3.5 bars, you know. It was not like a popular song of today, you know, the usual sort of 32-bar chorus. Yeah. But we won the cup, and it was a great feeling.
It's like the old music hall gag, isn't it? When I nod my head, hit it.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
The list of people that you've known and worked with, and I said, you know, Hollywood back in your 20s, you met all the greats, didn't you?
That's a memorable moment because I went there with Judy Garland, and we hadn't opened, but she said, you know, we're going to a party tonight. She said, would you like to come? And you're alone, aren't you? I said, yeah. And she was with her future husband, a man named Sid Luft. And I arrived at this place, sat down at a table for 10. Now, I imagine there was Joan Crawford, Jack Benny, Groucho Marx, Ethel Merman, George Burns, Ronald Coleman. I just arrived from Rotherhithe, you know, in London. And suddenly, the lady sitting next to me, she said, and what do you do? And I said, well, I'm opening with Judy at the Palace on I think it must have been on the Monday night. I forget which day it was. But she said, oh, yeah, what do you do? And I said, well, you know, I sing, I do impressions. Hard to tell anybody what you do, you know. And then I said, well, what do you do? She said, I'm Joan Crawford. And oh, my God. And she told the table, she said, can we do that bit again for the folks? And said, do it like we just did it, you know. And what do you do, young man? I said, oh, I'm with Judy Garland. Yeah, and God, got one of the biggest roars you ever heard at the table. You know?
But, I mean, some of these people you'd have seen on the silver screen at the local Bermondsey cinema.
That's right, yeah. I mean, when you think of the cinema that we used to see them in, I mean, it was like a sort of a flea pit. Couldn't even afford an usherette. They trained a cat to walk backwards with one eye closed, you know.
Back in this country, through radio and then into television and variety and everything, again, you worked with some famous names, you know, in the early days of radio as well.
Yeah, sure did, yeah. Well, the big break coming through on radio was Archie Andrews show, you know, and I was in Educating Archie. I mean, when we used to do it for the audience on the Sunday, we would now not go home. We'd go into a small room, you know, just like an ordinary sort of living room, and there were about 8 of us there, and there were names like Tony Hancock, Julie Andrews, Eric Sykes, Hattie Jakes, people that went and got so great, you know, and it's hard to tell people, you know, what it was like. And none of us were names, you know. I mean, we became names later on, but there was no jealousy or anything like that. We all used to start for the show. I find now there's a little bit of green eye around, you know. But in our day, you just tried everything to make the show big and great, you know.
What was your first love? Did you always want to be a comedian, or did you always want to be a singer? What was it?
No, I didn't start out as anything, really. I mean, I was doing sketches, and then I sort of helped you paint the scenery and things like that, and it was a graduation thing more than anything else. But I love the theatre. I love the feel of it. And don't forget, you know, in the early days, I'm working with musicians I've never been privileged to work with before. You know, I mean, like Norrie Paramore. You remember Norrie, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
did all the great work with Cliff in the early days, of course.
That's right. And he had the Midland Light Orchestra. Yeah. There was Ray Ellington used to play drums. I had a record of Joe Loss with a vocal by a man named Chick Henderson called Begin the Begin. And I'd never had the bongos played behind me by a man named Ray Ellington, who was very famous through the Goon shows, you know. It's lovely that the whole thing comes to life, you know. And
actually, over the years, you used to have a lot of banter with your musical directors, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, Bob Dixon. Yeah, he was with me for 36 years, and we went everywhere together. He was a lovely man. You see, out of these things, Martin, there's so many stories evolve. You know, I walked into his dressing room one night, and he was getting ready for a shave. He had the lather around his face, and his eyes were getting a bit troublesome, and he was trying to get a 3-holed blade into his razor. And I said, where'd you get that razor from? He said, I had it in the RAF. And he's talking about 20 years later, he's still using the same. I said, why don't you do away with those things, Bob? I said, there's a thing now on the market. It's called Bic. You have a few shaves out of them, you throw them away. No, he didn't want to know about that. So I said, listen, if I go into one of the chemist shops, I'll get you some, you know. So I bought him 6. The same night I see him in it. And he's back with the same old razor. I said, well, where are those razors I bought you? He said, they wouldn't cut butter hot. Right from the north, you know. He said, no, I said, well, let me see you. Do you using it wrong? And he hadn't taken the cover off. They had little plastic covers.
Where did all that start then? The sing-along of Max ideas and so on?
Well, you know, I mean, I always sort of, I could hold a tune and I did different things along the way, and then people, you know, suddenly say to you, when I did the Judy Garland show, for instance, I used to do a very funny bit, a paper tearing bit, and I would tell the audience that I was going to make a pig out of this newspaper, and then I would nibble it away, but I'd tell the audience, it takes about a minute and a half, so I'll do a little song while we're there. And then I used to do a lovely ballad that was around it. You sigh, this song begins, you speak and I hear violins, it's magic. When I finished it, you know, I'd screw it up in a ball without showing what I'd done, and then throw it away and say, oh, I wish I could do it. Big laugh, you know, right at the end of the show. And then the audience, some of the audience used to say, where's the pig? Where's the pig? I said, no pig, there's a litter. But once in New York, somebody said, hey, he said, you ought to sing more in the act, you know, the Americans, you know. Anyway, I must have been doing something right, and yeah, I'm very grateful. Must have been doing the right thing, mustn't we?
I've got piles of your records here in front of me. Pictures of you, spotlight on Max Bygraves and deck of cards and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, the television success was incredible as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, good days.
You were a household name, and there are lots of people in the entertainment business who are famous, but people don't actually like very much. But I think you'd find it very hard to find somebody who doesn't like Max Bygraves, and that's a great testament to you, isn't it?
It's a great compliment from you as well. Thank you. I'm very grateful. You know, I've never pulled any tricks. I've always tried to give an audience value, and I think they sort of sense that. I get asked sometimes about people who want to go on the stage and you want to do this and you want to do that, you know. And I said, now wait a minute, before you do anything, let that audience know that you're trying. They'll never be rude or bad if they sense somebody is trying. And I think that's the key to a hell of a lot of what you're doing.
Now, let's put the record straight, shall we? You've been impersonated by just about everybody over the years. Did you ever say, I want to tell you a story?
I think I must have done, but I live in Bournemouth, you know, and there's about 5 theatres, and every summer they're always filled, and I try to help, you know. I know what it's like to be on the road and not have a home, you know, and you're in digs or something. I used to invite quite a lot of people up, and Mike Howerd used to bring his little children up there and swim in the pool, and I didn't think much of it, you know, about it. But about a week later, I see him on television, and he says, and as Max Bygraves said, I want to tell you a story. I thought, yeah, it's not a bad impression. It's a bit like me, you know. And then it got slower. The other impressionists started hearing. Yeah, true, and suddenly it wasn't, I want to tell you a story, you know, like a throwaway. Everyone said, I want to tell you a story. And my wife said to me, you don't speak like that, you know. Where are they getting this from? I said, well, it's like anything else, you know, like catchphrases, you know. Bruce never ever said, I'm in charge. He did it, but quite off the top of his head, he didn't know he was going to finish up with them. I had lots and lots of catchphrases, and Eric Sykes, who was writing the show, knew that you could never plan them. You could never say, all right, we'll start doing that every week, and suddenly everybody will. They'll find, the audience will know if it's spontaneous. You can't design a catchphrase. I don't think. Same as all this lovely advice. And Max Miller says to me, you know, I've got to do a part in a show, Tom Brown's Schooldays, and I'm playing the part of the coachman. And the director, the producer, said, would you be able to grow your own beard? I'm not doing it for about a fortnight. And at the same time, I'm appearing at the Palladium with Max Miller. And I go into his room sometimes, dressing room. He looks closely at me. He says, here, you haven't shaved today, have you? And I said, no. And I tell him why. He said, no, don't get rid of that. He said, no man ever made an audience laugh with hair on his face.